tribe or bride? How does this fit in? In the book of Zechariah 11, we read about two staffs of a shepherd. One, which is a staff that is broken due to the fact that the people rejected the shepherd. The other staff, which means Hovlim, also means covenant, bondage, and relationship between people, not God, but between people. The first staff was a connection with God, and the other is a connection of people. Now, how does this is this important, right? So we read about Jacob becoming Israel, then marries two wives, Leah and Rachel. Rachel, which means lamb, and Leah is just sadness. But they have many children, 12 to be in fact, which makes out the tribes, which is important because in later on these tribes are divided when the Jerusalem is rebuilt, and in the time of David 10 goes dispersed due to sin, which is also important because in the Old Testament we also read about these two tribes that is divided into two kingdoms, the southern and the northern kingdom, where God then got angry due to idolatry of the one kingdom and divorced that part, which is then actually just one bride, the whole called Israel. So what do I mean? So God says in scripture that I will sift Israel amongst the people to get her back. Then Jesus comes and marries the lost bride, which is also the divorced bride. And this we also see in the parables where the prodigal son goes away, then comes back, and there is a festival prepared for him. And the brother who is in the house all the time got jealous and said, "But you never had a festival for me." And the father said, "But you were always in my house. Why did you not ask?" And this relates also to the two staffs, where the two brothers are angry at each other, actually, where the one seems to be favored, but the other one was in the house, much like the one bride of Jacob who was jealous of the other bride and seeking attention, where, one had more children eventually to please the husband and the other was a bit barren. Now, this we also see where the two kingdoms, one who was divorced as the northern kingdom, Ephraim, eventually, and the other one, the southern kingdom, which stays to be Judah. Then Jesus also explains that he came for the lost sheep, which is interesting because Leah is buried with Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebekah, and Rachel is buried in Raman, which is then a pilgrimage road even today. And in scripture, it says that she calls out for the lost children to come back. So, what am I trying to say, right? Jesus is the shepherd of the bride. In that time, in the Old Testament, in Isaiah, Jeremiah, and also in Psalms, we read that the people, God's people, Israel, was called a sheep, a flock that needed to be gathered and taken back into pasture with God. So, if Jesus is the good shepherd who came for his lost sheep, then those who were lost and scattered and also divorced needed to be taken back, right? How do the sheep know again who's the shepherd? They hear his voice and knows his voice, then starts to follow him. Now, it is interesting because the one son who rejected his father, who was angry because he favored his brother who came back as a lost brother, also is described in Zechariah as one who then rejects the Messiah as a shepherd. But also we see in that scripture that the other staff is broken due to a break in bondage between the two people, the two kingdoms, the two tribes. What am I saying is that even today we have dispute in who is God's favorite people, right? But God actually has only one bride, one Israel, which were two kingdoms, two who needed to be one, but one despises the other and rejects the Messiah, where the other then feels lost and barren, right, like Rachel the lamb, who felt lost and barren. But there are many relations that we must make. So Leah had the son Judah, where the messianic line came from. Jesus was born out of the bloodline of Judah, which is interesting because Rachel also had Benjamin. And Benjamin is also called son of sorrows, as she names him after giving birth. But then Jacob says, no, I am going to call him son of my right hand. Now, looking at Jesus, the Messiah of all of the tribes of the two wives, is that he is also from the bloodline, the Lion of Judah, but he's also the man of sorrows like Benjamin, and then sits at the right hand of God, as his father Jacob then renames him. So God, who sifts out Israel in the last days from amongst the people who rejects him, also in the book of Zechariah then says that he has left a remnant that would carry his word. Now, it is interesting to know that Jesus also, who remarries his bride, giving her a second cup to drink from. After the Passover cup, she gets baptized like a mikvah bath, and then knows who the shepherd is. And then Jesus takes a second cup, as in a traditional marriage. You can watch that video of mine where I explain the whole traditional marriage and how Jesus fulfills it. You will understand. Is also shown in the ancient times, where Joseph gives his brother Benjamin a cup that he hides in his carriage. So then he comes back. The brother who he loves so much comes back. This is also to show that Rachel, the lamb, who is just a sheep, like in the scripture, sheep that is lost, uh, because she felt barren in her heart. Isn't it that most people feel that they are not chosen and feel barren in their heart? Where Leah was firstly chosen by her father as the bride of Jacob, Israel, and Rachel saw her as the chosen one. Now, let me leave that to sink in with you. Follow me along, and I have a lot more to explain out of the scriptures. And I hope it is interesting for you, makes you think a little bit, and also, you know, you can read for yourself. It's always good to go back to scripture and just read it again.